All right, guys, let's talk about finding the least common multiples. So when you hear that word least, right, we know we want small. And when you hear multiple, hopefully that brings back memories of skip counting, right? So on this case, what we're going to do is we're going to list. So that's one strategy, right, is to list all of the multiples for those numbers. So when my example is 4. So I kind of listed, and you can see the numbers here. And I look at my 6 and I listed them. And then I'm going to find the least, which means the smallest. So I'm kind of taking a look, and 4 is on here. And I already know 4 is less than 6. So I knew 4 wasn't going to be on the list of 6. But when I look, so I went to 12. So here's my 12. And when I look, I'm going to have 12. So my least common multiple is going to be 12, right? The other thing that you can do, right, is you can look at your common multiples. But honestly, I think sometimes it is a little bit easier just if you look here, if you do not have a multiplication chart. If you have a multiplication chart in front of you, well, then I would just be looking down 4's column, and I'd be looking down 6's column, and I would pay attention to the first number when I was going down the column, or if I was going across the row, the first one that I came to that was the same, and it's going to look for the smallest one. So the first one I come to, obviously, is going to be the smallest, because as we move down the table or as we move across the rows, right, we're going to get larger. Okay, so we're going to look at my 6 and my 8, and let's take a look. So when I'm doing this, basically I make my list. I did 6 times 1, 6 times 2, 6 times 3, 6 times 4, 6 times 5, and I keep going. Notice I stopped with 8. This is 6 times 8 is 48 because of the fact that here's my 8. And if I have to, and I don't have any smaller numbers, I know right away that this number here would be my smallest number, except for let's take a look. So if I'm moving right along, I know that I do not have any of those, but and sorry, let me back up for a second. I did the same thing with my 8s. 8 times 1, 8 times 2, 8 times 3, 8 times 4. This is again the same as if I was looking across the row on a multiplication chart or down the table on a multiplication chart. And I see right away that this 24 here is the same thing right here. So 24 is going to be my least common multiple. Let's take a look at 4. Okay, you try it. So we're going to do 4 times 1, 4 times 2, and we're going to keep on going down. I'm going to stop when I have my 12 lines because of the fact that I do that. Okay, so I skip counted by 4s, right? And then I skip counted by 12. Now remember, I'm doing 12 times 1, 12 times 2, 12 times 3, 12 times 4. The other thing that I can do, if you notice, each time I'm just adding 4 more up here. 4 plus 4 is 8. 8 plus 4 is 12. And I'm doing the same thing down here. So I'm saying that because if you do not wish to kind of do keep on doing multiplication, you don't have a multiplication chart in front of you, you can do it that way. Now, here's the next thing I'm going to tell you. Remember, I've told you this before. I'm lazy. I like to do the fastest way that works. So I would definitely not have all of these, because if I notice, look at what happens right here. So 12 is going to be my least common multiple. Once I come to my least common multiple, I'd stop. So my suggestion, the same thing here, right? I would not keep going. This is just to show you. That's kind of what we're talking about. And that's when we're talking when we need the least, we're talking about the smallest. So my suggestion is when you have two numbers, take the, you can always start with the smallest and do several. And then you're going to do just a couple on the biggest because it comes to it pretty quick, right? The bigger the two. Same thing with 4 and 12. Look, if I just listed, let's say even just start with like 4 or 5 of the multiples of that smaller one, and then go ahead and start, I would know right away if I only listed 4 multiples of 4, the first 4 multiples, I'd know I could stop right away because I had my 12. So the same thing, and I'm going to actually do that right here for this one, right? So I have 11 and 5. So I'm going to list about 5 of them for 5, and then I'm going to see, are in those first 5, does the one for 11 come up on that? Okay, so I listed the first five for the first five multiples for 5. I'm counting by fives. That's pretty easy. We know that. And 11 definitely does not show up in here. So I also happen to know that it's not going to be pretty close because 11, notice, is not a multiple of 5. Or sorry, yes, it is. The 11 itself is not going to be a multiple of 5, but I'm going to figure out from what that is if I keep going. But my guess is on this one, right? I'm probably just going to have to go to the final part where it's 11 times 5. So then that's where I'm going to see, and that's going to be the multiple, right? Because this is 11 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So let's take a look. And if you notice, when I keep going along counting by fives, I get to 55. And this is going to be the fifth one. And the reason I knew that is also because 1 times anything is the number you multiplied it by. So obviously, when I have my 2 ones, that's going to make a big difference. So 55 is going to be my least common multiple. Obviously, compared to the values that we had so far, that is a lot higher. But the problem is we have to look at the numbers that we have. When I have 2 and 8, I also know right away that 8 is one of my multiples, right? When I skip count, 2 times 4 is going to give me 8. So I know right away that 8 is going to be my least common multiple. So notice that's where I'm going to stop. It doesn't make sense for me to keep going on all these lines, right? And I knew that because if I know that this smaller number is a factor of this larger number, that's going to help me to know right away. That's going to be my least common multiple, okay? 11 and 12. This one gets a little bit trickier because of the fact that we know when we have my 11s, it's going to be times whatever that is. So if I'm taking a look, so obviously when we start on this one, look how far out I have to go because of the fact that I'm doing 11 times each of those numbers, 11 times 1, 11 times 2, 11 times 3, and so on. And I end up all the way down there. So we're at our much larger, right? And this one, so we're doing that. So hopefully you're beginning to catch on. And sometimes my least common multiple is going to be a very large number, okay? Remember, a multiple is always going to be that number or larger. It is never going to be smaller than the number you start with. But if it's smaller than the number you start with, then that would be a factor of the number. That's not a multiple of the number. The multiples are going to be when you skip count by that number. So my next one, I have 6 and 7, and 6 is not a factor of 7. So we're going to have to see, and it may end up that my least common multiple is 6 times 7, the answer to that, which will be 42. So let's take a look. And in this case, that's what my answer would be, because look, if I took my advice and I did the first 5, 7 doesn't have any common multiples for that. So that's where we're going to end up, that least common multiple is going to be those two numbers by it times themselves, right? 6 times 7 is 42. 7 times 6 is 42, okay? In each case, right, this is 7 groups of 6, and this one is 6 groups of 7. That's kind of what we're doing, okay? Let's take a look at my 9 and my 5. So remember, I'm going to start, and let's start with my first 5 of first 5 multiples of 5. Okay, so skip counting by 5. So when I look at this, that's not going to work. So because 25 is going to be less than the 27, and none of these are lining up. So I have to keep going. And obviously, when I'm doing this, so 9 times 4 is going to give me 36. And 9 times 5, yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is going to give me 45. So it's going to give me 45. Sorry, guys, I put it off because you don't need to see my hand every time. And then if I skip count by 5, so 45, which is the same as my 9 times 5. This is 5 groups of 9, and this is 9 groups of 5. Is going to be my least common multiple. Okay, when I have my 2s and my 5s, I already know that when I'm counting by 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And I know when I'm got by 5, 10 is a multiple of 5. So on that one, I see that I only have to do 2 groups of 5, and I did 5 groups of 10, 5 groups of 2 to equal 10. So my least common multiple in this one is 10. We're going to have the same thing here. So I know that I'm going to have to do 9 groups of 2 and 2 groups of 9. So in this one, 18 is going to be my least common multiple. And I want to point out the way that I know that is because 2 is an even number and 9 is an odd number. So I already know offhand that that's kind of going to help me because I'm not going to do 2 times something equal 9. So I know I'm going to have to go for more. Same thing here. Even, odd. I can't do 2 times any whole number and equal 5. So, and that's going to be my factor. But I'm saying that because when I move up and I'm counting by 2s, I already know I'm not going to come up with 5. Because remember, my multiples is 2 times 1, 2 times 2, 2 times 3. So that's what I'm kind of talking about, okay? And when I have 3 and 6, well, I know 3 is a factor of 6. So I also know that this is going to be a multiple of, or that 6 is going to be multiple of 3. So I know that I have 3, because 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6, and there's my 6. So that's going to be right there. I only had to do 1 group of 6, and I did 2 groups of 3. So 6 is my least common multiple. I hope that helps a little bit, or hopefully the whole bit. But remember, feel free to ask for help.